Brent Faiyaz just released his new album, Icon, which has 10 songs, a 33-minute runtime, and was executive produced by Raphael City. Now, I re-listened to this album from top to bottom more than 10 times before settling on how I feel about this project because I was admittedly very underwhelmed after several listens. But I fuck with Brent Faiyaz too heavy to just accept not fucking with his album without making a good faith effort to see the vision. And now that I've stopped with it for a while, I don't hate the album, nor would I call it bad or trash, but I remain underwhelmed, and I definitely would not fight anyone who's calling it mid, I'm sorry. But contrary to popular belief, I do not feel this way because Brent healed or denied us toxicity. The discourse around this album can be distilled into two camps. One camp who doesn't like the album, and the other camp who loves the album and thinks that everyone who doesn't like it only doesn't like it because Brent is healed now and not giving us the toxicity he's been delivering to us for almost a decade. In regards to the camp who think people don't like this album simply because Brent evolved and gave us a more healed, mature, and in-love version of an artist we've known purely for melodic fuckboyery, like, just because I haunt you with Tommy and I want you, baby, I don't, you got some high hopes, or fuck the world, I'm a walking erection. It is undeniably true that many fans want their favorite artists to do the one thing they fell in love with them for forever, and can be resistant, if not outright hostile, to their faves changing or evolving in any way. Fans like that be hostile even when the new shit their fave is doing is undeniably a hit. Today, it's an undeniable album whose impact was huge, but when Kanye made 808s and Heartbreaks, I can remember the amount of niggas who was like, what the fuck is this shit? Beyonce's Renaissance is one of, if not the best album in her discography, but there's an entire sect of day one Beyonce fans who didn't care for it the second Beyonce released Break My Soul as a single, and they're still begging for old Beyonce. So I am not going to deny that there are niggas who absolutely would hate anything Brent put out that didn't align with who and what he's presented to them for the last decade. I also don't fault or judge anyone who wanted toxicity from an artist whose entire brand has been toxicity up until this point. However, I don't think the majority of fans who don't like or were underwhelmed by this project feel that way because it's not toxic. I think what's happening is that Brent Faiyaz's shtick has been toxic crooner. That's quite literally why and what we listen to his music for. And he has faithfully and successfully delivered that in project after project for a decade. So fans who've liked every project he's ever released came into this project expecting to love it, like they've always loved it. And when they didn't, they were shocked and started scrambling to figure out why, what's changed. And the first obvious difference between this album and his other albums is the subject matter. So they assumed maybe that's it and they just shrugged their shoulders. It's not much different from fans who loved Kid Cudi's older music but didn't connect to his later music, blaming the change on him getting sober. Or Chance the Rapper fans, blaming him loving his wife for why they hated The Big Day. It's not that fans truly have a problem with Kid Cudi being sober, Chance the Rapper loving his now ex-wife, or Brent Faiyaz healing. They're not rejecting the artist, they're rejecting the music. They just haven't properly diagnosed the problem with the music, so they lean on the changes that seem most obvious to them as a consumer. And consumers don't actually know the artist or the actual behind the scenes or the mechanics of how all their music is made or what really makes it special or not. So they can't truly diagnose the problem, so they just throw out ideas about what little they do know. Fans loved Man on the Moon. All they knew was that he made the stuff they love on drugs and the stuff they hated sober, so they attributed the reason to the drugs. Chance the Rapper fans loved Acid Rap and Coloring Book when he was unmarried and also doing drugs. So when they hated The Big Day, which Chance made after finally marrying the mother of his children, who had been present in his life the entire time he made the music they did love before, mind you, they put it on his marriage rather than the album being rushed and or a myriad of other factors that contribute to its failure. It's the same reason why when Ari Lennox was signed to Dreamville, fans who thought she should be a bigger artist blamed Dreamville. And now that she's left Dreamville, the fans who thought she should leave Dreamville now blame her leaving Dreamville for why they don't like her new music. I've seen people insist that all Chloe needs to do is lock in with one producer. Then you see people criticizing LMA for being locked in with one producer. Stop talking about she needs to stop sticking with DJ Mustard and experiment with other producers. Just like I see folk blaming disliking Ari's latest project on her locking in with Jermaine Dupri. I said that to say, the fans really don't know why they don't like what their faves are making or why the masses aren't connecting to it. And very few try to seriously diagnose the problem. They just speculate and throw out the easiest public-facing explanation. And I think that's what's happening when underwhelmed Brent Faiyaz fans throw out that they're not feeling this healed version of him or they want his toxic music back. But I gave some serious thoughts as to the reasons for the disconnect between this album and the fans. And I think it's because most of this project just feels like it's either missing something or holding back. Either way, the result is an album that isn't bad, but boring. And unfortunately, I think that vibe is established at the outset because the first track of the album is literally an instrumental, which let's talk about, because I think the opening track of an album is very important. It sets the tone for the project and helps most casual listeners decide whether they're even gonna bother giving the rest of the album a chance at all. And I'm not against artists making artistic choices with the intro to their albums. I liked when Chloe opened her debut album with Someone's Calling Chloe, where she seemed to be kind of summoning herself. I love the intro to Will Smith's latest album, where the intro featured him rapping as his own haters. I'm totally fine with the intro to an album not necessarily being meant for replay value, but instead to introduce the theme or storyline of the album in some kind of unconventional manner. But Brent Faiyaz decided to open his album with an instrumental, not a song at all. I don't think the intro to this project failed to set the tone for the album. Quite the opposite, actually. It was unfortunately an apt reflection of the kind of elevated music half of the album felt like beautiful background music, but not songs actually meant to be sung to. Of the 10 tracks on the album, I like and downloaded 4 of them. Excluding the intro to the album, which wasn't a real song, the first 4 real tracks of the album, Wrong Faces, Have To, Butterflies, and Other Side, are easily the best tracks on the album. What those tracks, which are the best tracks on the album, have in common with each other, but not the rest of the album, is that they actually feel like songs Brent cared for us to be able to remember and sing along to, meaning they have a hook, a chorus, all the components of a song. Whereas just about everything else on the album feels more like a concept, a journal entry sang to a beat that you could play in the background while you study without being distracted. And I know that Brent Faiyaz and his team eventually came to this conclusion because they recently released the deluxe to this album with 2 bonus tracks that are real songs. I think they figured out that otherwise the album is just truly minimalist in a way that I don't care for. Which is why I almost liked the tracks 4 Seasons and World Is Yours, but both tracks suffer from what most of the tracks in the album do. They lack the mechanics necessary to take something from someone just singing to a beat to an actual song you can sing along to. Have To and Other Side are the obvious standouts of the entire album, and I hope that one of them are the next single. They're generally super catchy bops that I scolded myself for thinking felt more like Bruno Mars songs, or would have been better executed had an artist like Bruno Mars sung it. Because while Brent definitely does deliver, and I do really appreciate his vocal delivery on this project, both those tracks feel like they're supposed to have a lot more joy and excitement in the delivery that Brent's just too cool, let me do as little as possible energy doesn't achieve. Whereas a nigga like Bruno would have been coked out, sliding across the floor, belting his heart out to both tracks. But again, I say, I scolded myself for that intrusive thought because it makes me think of a time some annoying motherfucker in my comments said one of my Illuminati productions should have been made by another creator. And I was like, nigga, it's my fucking working ideas. It literally couldn't be made by another creator. The work ceases to exist without me, nigga. Granted, these situations are not analogous because while this is Brent Faiyaz' song, it was written by Benny Blanco and Roy, and it was produced by Raphael Saadiq and a few other producers. So it definitely theoretically could exist without Brent or have been given to another artist. But nevertheless, I'm gonna treat my fellow creatives how I would like to be treated. So moving on. So let me be clear, how I feel about this project is not the result of Brent not working hard enough or putting enough energy into the project or anything like that. I can tell he worked hard and I can see the intentionality. The project feels like Brent is trying to step out of a box and really establish himself as a true artist, not just your toxic fave. And I think that's illustrated in him choosing Raphael Saadiq to executive produce the project. And the name of the project, the packaging of the project, and his choosing to only give 10 songs indicates to me a desire to choose quality over quantity. So I applaud that intentionality. And like I said earlier, I do believe he delivers some of his strongest vocal performances on this album, especially on tracks like Pure Fantasy. So this is not a case of an artist not having a clear artistic vision or not putting in the effort. I don't think he did too little because he couldn't do more. I think the minimalism was a choice that just didn't work for me. For example, on the track Butterflies, which is one of the 4 songs I really liked on the album, I enjoyed it the entire time I was listening to it, but I could feel exactly where it would have benefited from having a female singer featuring on it. There were so many places for a woman's voice to weave in and out with his, on top of the fact that the content of the song is him literally talking to a woman and asking her questions. It was missing exactly the razzle dazzle like Coco Jones gave Brent's old track Moment of Your Life on his previous album. It's clear to me, even in just looking at the music video that Brent released for the album single Wrong Faces, where he's just walking through the rain, that he was trying to channel the R&B lover boy vibes and nostalgia of the past that we deeply appreciated. But unlike when Boyz II Men or Casey and JoJo did it, or shit, even Ray J's One Wish, Brent does not commit energetically. If you look at the music video for Wrong Faces, Brent is barely making the effort to move his fucking lips to lip sing the song for real. It ain't even in sync. When R&B singing niggas of the past got in the rain, they knew there was no place for playing cool or holding back. That's when it's time to get serious and belch your soul. Put your fucking back into it, okay? Maybe I'll be okay if I get one. If I have one with... Nigga, what? You cannot get in the ring playing coy. I feel that Brent was trying to give us a more mature, lover boy, nostalgic R&B vibe, but it missed the mark for me. Not because I don't think it's sincere or because he ain't work hard, but to truly execute what he was going for, he would have had to let loose a lot more, give us more. But he went with a cleaner, minimalistic route that complements his general cool, low energy persona, but it just did not move me outside of the 4 songs I mentioned. And I like the 2 bonus tracks, so that brings us up to 6. But like I said, it's not a bad project by any means. But for me, it's one of those albums that I likely won't revisit as an album, but I will keep the songs I downloaded in rotation because I really fucked with them heavy. All in all, for me, this album is a 5 out of 10.